Hey, horror fans. We are back, board now, Rachel McDonald, and we return to the bumpy road that is the Wrong Term franchise. This is going to be our review of Wrong Term 4 Bloody Beginnings. And that is so far, I'll say that before we get into the film itself, that is my favourite subtitle so far.
Yeah, it's pretty
I do
good.
like this one.
hmm
It's actually quite clever because there is a little bit of an origin story at the start as well. So it does have a double meaning sort of thing, bloody beginning. So that's a good one. So it's from 2011, and I can confirm this time because I know Rachel has mentioned this on our previous ones, watching like the unrated cut. I can confirm for sure that I watched the unrated cut this
Uh,
time in the ski lodge where we have a group of students on like a ski trip to get away. And this time, I think because of the snow and the conditions, they sort of take a wrong turn and they end up at this really old rundown asylum which isn't in use anymore, and it's that sort of setting where we get the cannibals get help because they've got obviously like a snowmobile type thing, and they sort of work out that this character is probably the best one to like tempt the conditions sort of thing because they don't all have the right sort of clothing and stuff to sort of chance it. So obviously that's where most of the film takes place, but at the very beginning of the film, we do get a flashback to 1974 and to the past at this asylum. And we actually, this is the one where we do get a little bit of origin stories, and we do see these two brothers in particular who are kind of like the main cannibal years later, and we see that of how they basically escape the asylum. There's like a visiting doctor who thinks that she can maybe give them some special treatment, that maybe it's a different way to like potentially cure them. And you've got like the regular doctor there saying that, you know, you may be good, but I don't think you're any match for these jobs. In so many words, he doesn't quite go that far, but in so many words, he's sort of saying that. But we get the setup of how they escape the asylum all these years later, and a little bit of an origin. So really the situation with these films is we find ourselves praying for a 3 out of 10. That's where we are, because obviously our ratings for Wrong Turn 2 and Wrong Turn 3 was just so low, you know, like
yes.
just such a utter trash. Then it's got to the stage where a 3 out of 10 would be a result. We would grasp that right now and take it. So as we go into the review, you're going to find out if we at least got to that. It's a very low mark. Did they at least make that? We're going to find out. So, Rachel, what do you think of Wrong Term 4?
Okay, so I will say I did enjoy this one more than the previous two. I thought the change of setting was good. I was like, I actually made that note here. I was like, okay, this is very over the top. Again, the opening scene is pretty insane, but at least they were trying to do something interesting because the previous two films, I mean, even though they did like the convict storyline and stuff like that, it really just felt like copy and paste bad versions of the very first film. So I liked that this one had a bit of a setting change. We had a bit of a seasonal change as well. So we had different things to work with, hypothermia, things like that. I thought the opening scene was interesting but very intense, like very, very intense. So basically, as the new doctor's coming in, one of the prisoners grabs her and manages to steal her hairpin. I don't know how no one noticed that they took her hairpin. I mean, girls notice when you take things out of their hair. That's not something that would go unnoticed. And of course, there's a mass breakout and the prisoners get loose. I wasn't sure where they were originally going with the cannibal family. I was like, okay, are we going to get some sort of like Freudian excuse? But no, it turns out they were always just cannibals. Apparently they were found feeding on their parents, so they just have the cannibal gene or whatever. And there were some scenes in that opening scene that I was finding really hard to stomach. The scene where they strap the female doctor down to the electric chair and start giving her electric shocks, that definitely felt a bit rapey to me, and I had to turn the sound off. But at the very least, it was interesting, and it was a very intense opening scene. They did a weird thing with some classical music where I think they were trying to like show the absurdity of what was happening. But like I said, at the very least, it was interesting. At one point in time, though, I really felt like I was suddenly watching Saw, because they like string the doctor up with like barbed wire and give him a really, really slow death. Like it was like 2 minutes long of this dude just his arms just getting like ripped apart. I was like, okay, we don't need to watch a Saw film. Let's not mix and mash our horror films. This is I think I made a note. I was like, Jesus Christ, they're dragging the doctor's deaths out. But I did think that first scene was very intense, and at the very least it was very interesting. And then, of course, we went straight into the obligatory tits shot, that weird ass scene where there were like two college couples having sex in the same dorm. And then like a fifth person walks in and just talks to them all while they're butt naked and still doing stuff about how they're going on the ski trip. I think I wrote in like big letters. I'm like, this has, like, you can't see it, but I'm like, this has nothing to do with anything. Why are they all having sex in the same room? This is really weird. So I found that scene really weird. But I have to say,
Just
I liked the characters.
Free love, I guess.
It was
Free
just
love, I guess. Yeah.
Look,
Get on board
do whatever
with
you
it,
want.
Rachel.
That's cool. But I'm just a prude, okay? I don't like nudity in films, and I especially don't like nudity where there is no point. Like, I understand that some films you need nudity to get certain points across, but when it's just boobs for the sake of boobs, it's like, yeah, okay, enough. I'm done. Just don't need to see this. But I have to say, I did like the characters in this a lot more than I have liked the previous two films. And I think it's because, and we'll talk about this more as we go into the plot, these guys were very proactive. You know, like when they get stranded, like, so they go on their snowmobile trip, but when they get stranded, you know, they're very proactive. They're like, okay, we need to do this, we need to find fire, we need to get this going. You know, they don't just sit around waiting for things to happen to them. I thought that they were very, very good in that sense. I mean, again, thin characters, not a whole lot going on there. I don't think I can remember a single one of their names, but they didn't make me hate them. I wasn't hoping that these guys would die, which is kind of what I was hoping for in the previous two films. I was like, okay, I'm done, just kill them all. And I did think that this film brought back that kind of survival angle that the first film had, you know. I don't think it was as good, but it was definitely not as over the top as the previous two. There was a lot more, you know, of them being in the mental asylum and, like, you know, having parts where you saw that they were being watched and you saw that they were being stalked. And I thought that some of it was actually not bad. The gore was a little too over the top at times. The scene where they're basically like filleting a guy and like fonduing him, like, that was a little much, and I had to turn the sound off. But overall, I didn't hate this one, and I didn't end up watching it on fast forward, which is what I did with the previous two. So definitely a bit of a step up, but it definitely also still has its issues. What about you?
I still think it's a bad movie.
No, definitely.
The characters still aren't great overall. I think some of the positives you mentioned I agree with. So it is sort of a step up from the last two, and it's the sort of thing. It's an easy enough watch. I could see myself rewatching this. I have a couple of comments about the opening scene. I think it's quite a good opening scene. One thing I'll say, and I think this is just showing again how low budget this film is, because I was never convinced they were in the 1970s. I think it's maybe, apart from like the fashion a little bit, like what she was wearing, but apart from that, because the look of that scene is pretty consistent with the look of the rest of the film, where they're meant to be in more modern times. But no, I think that's an okay scene. I mean, the backstory is like whatever, but it's an okay scene. I take you. I think you probably have a point about the scene with the female doctor coming off as a bit rapey, but it's a nuts and bolts, in your face sort of scene that sort of as an opening to a horror movie, I think is quite enjoyable. And the stuff with the music, it's just that stuff of being kind of wacky and just using like quite light-hearted, beautiful music to the backdrop of this malicious sort of horror type scene. So I quite enjoyed that. I think the acting's pretty bad overall. One or two weren't too bad. It's a bit more of a sense of kind of rules and them trying to figure stuff out, or them trying to at least come up with strategy. You get debates at certain stages. There's obviously a big debate later on, like near the end of the film, where obviously there's like one character in particular who, because of what's happened to like his girlfriend and the rest of them, he's like dead set on, because at one point they've got them captured and like in a cage, and he's dead set on just killing them. And obviously the others, and it's quite an interesting discussion for this film to have, because the others, there is this sort of line to do with, well, the effect of it, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but the effect of it is then we have to be better, sort of thing. That's the effect of it. So I actually give it props for introducing that, and introducing a bit of like good sort of debate in it. And he was obviously a bit over the edge and a bit off the wall, and way too aggressive. I have to say they were a little dumb to make him the first to be on watch that night, considering he had all this rage. I mean, maybe later on when he calmed down or something like that. I mean, if they have to take it in shifts anyway, but to make him the first person, I mean, that was a disaster waiting to happen. Events in this one, then they were going for a bit of the humans are the real monsters type thing, more than like, and mate. A little bit, because you had it set in the asylum, and there were certain scenes where they seemed to be like mocking the monsters a bit more, because you obviously had this theatre setting, and they went into the background where they supposedly put on plays back in the 70s and stuff, and you actually had the humans going around in wheelchairs at one point, which I kind of think with the characters that the girls as characters were sort of fine, but it was more so that they just weren't assholes, unlike some of the men, sort of thing. I mean, obviously you had the one guy who was meant to be the more nerdy, sensitive type one, the one with the slick back. I mean, he still looked like a male model to me, but they all do really. But, but he was obviously meant to be the one who had a bit more, about him, sort of out of the men. But the girls, like I would say, as basic human beings, were a bit more likable, but there still wasn't a lot to their characters to really get into. Obviously, I think the one Kenna was probably the best of them. She seemed to be like the main final girl, or that's the way they were pushing her a little. Some kills were good, some weren't so good. Again, it's sort of very low budget. Again, it's sort of been here, done that. Again, there was some irritating moments with characters. There was some, sort of soapy style dialogue. Definitely a step up overall. I think probably the setting helped, a different setting, more of the survival horror feel as well.
I thought the girls were really cool, especially towards the end. I was like, okay, these final girls feel like they're earning their final girl status. I liked the scene where they were talking about how, they're like, there's weapons down in the basement. We could go and get them. We can get out of here. We can defend ourselves. I felt that they made smarter choices than the previous two films, like when they're like, okay, we need to get to the office. We can lock ourselves in the office. We need to get to the basement. We can get weapons. Like, it wasn't just, they were just running around all willy-nilly being stupid and getting themselves killed. It actually felt like
Yeah.
some of them were actually thinking some stuff through, and it was kind of nice to see in this franchise, like, people actually use their brains for once. There was one scene towards the end, and we're getting into spoiler territory, but that actually got me, and I thought this was actually quite an effective scene. And it's when the girls are hiding and they see one of the hillbillies run past, and they're like, oh, it's the small one, we can go out, we can get it. And they chase him down, and they like fully start like stabbing him, and it's like, whoa, these girls are a little scary. And then they see that he's got a sack over his head, and they take the sack off, and it turns out to be their friend. They've accidentally killed their friend. And I think I realized like a split second before they revealed it what had happened. I was like, that was actually quite effective. And then I have to say, I really liked the ending. I thought the ending was like a really fun little like gotcha, because towards the end, I also thought, so Keith mentioned, and I think I talked about it earlier, there's one of the girls is all like, let me go and get help. I'm the best skier. I can make it through. And you see her kind of, trying to survive at night. And then there's this very sad, almost kind of haunting shot showing her frozen body just propped up against a tree that she's frozen to death. But then there's a couple of the other girls. They're out in the fields and the snow, and there's one scene where they kind of play a bit of a bait and switch with one of the bad guys, where one of them pretends to be like running away and screaming, and then the other one comes out and like just nails him in the face. And that scene where the guy gets taken out by a tree branch, I think I laughed too much at that. I don't think that was supposed to be as funny as as it was meant to be. But I do love that final scene where you see the two girls and they're so happy and they've taken out the guys, and they get on the snowmobile and they go to like drive away, and then they drive through a barbed wire fence and their heads just go flying off in slow motion. I thought that was such a fun ending, because I thought that it really like turned it around, turned it on its head, so to speak, because you really did think that they were going to get away. And then there was that great scene where it just showed, nope, these guys are still in control. So the ending definitely elevated it for me. So did the characters, like I said. Oh, and then there was this one line that I absolutely loved. I actually wrote it down, where they're like, they probably turned Porter into a porterhouse by now. And I just thought that was just, that made me laugh too much. Or got too much for me. I'm not a fan of Gorn. I never have been. Like movies like Hostel, a lot of the Saw movies, all of those ones that Rob Zombie stuff. Like for me, it's like too much. And some of this stuff got to be too much. Like that scene where they were showing like them like cutting the flesh off some guy, and like they didn't move the camera at all, and you just had to hear him screaming. I was like, this is too much for me, but it was effective and it was used more sparingly.
Survival thing, and there being a bit more of like strategies and stuff, is because they sort of do this thing where they capture. I can't remember which. I think it's the character who's meant to be the more nerdy guy, isn't it? I think it's him with the short, slick back. Yeah, I forget his name now, but it's him. I'm pretty sure it's him. And you get this whole thing where they're just torturing him. And actually, I will say, because I'm going to insert a clip, but I will say I picked up on stream when we were watching this, and his sort of screams and that, it sounded like the Daniel Stern character out of Home Alone, like the sort of noises he makes. So I'm going to include side-by-side sort of clips of that, just as comparison.
No! Somebody help me! Somebody help me!
Too much torture porn, and again you question a little bit, well, that they're using them as bait supposedly, or would they really think this much about it? So There's
thought
that
that
scene
too.
where it goes a bit far. There's a couple of good kills. I did like the kill. I think it's Claire, the girl's name, like the one when she was hung up by the barbed wire. That was
Oh, by
quite a
her
good
neck.
kill.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
that
one was
was very
pretty intense.
brutal because you did see the, you know, the thing going into her neck and the whole
Yeah.
struggle. But well, yeah, that was quite a good kill. That was nicely done. Crude lines that are just like nasty, like because
Yeah.
obviously you've got a couple of them are like lesbians, and you do get. I can't remember the exact, but one of
But
the
there is
more
insert obligatory
obnoxious
lesbian
guys
joke.
makes
Late
like it's
2011,
just a
we're
funny joke.
still, yeah, making those kinds of jokes. It's a little bit cringe.
Okay, I guess I just feel it's a bit of a punchline as well. Like it's more of a gag than
It
sort of,
was a
and
little
so
bit.
in shot of him coming in, he sort of like I remember it was like smiles or laughs, doesn't he, or something
Yeah,
like
yeah. And
that.
then he picks up the heads.
And
Get that. But I think for me, it just worked because I just
yeah,
didn't see it coming. I
but
was like,
yeah,
oh,
no,
yay, they've got
it
the
was
way.
okay. At one point, CGI sort just off because like bits of it did look convincing and like they were really there, but there was definitely one of the outside shots where it looked more like CGI. Each of the type seems for like the opening scene in the 70s had a very similar look.
Yes, it did.
What would you rate Wrong Turn for?
All right, so we are getting above a 3 here. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. I don't think it was terrible,
Okay.
terrible. I don't think it was good enough to warrant anything higher than a 4, but the fact that it had more proactive characters, I liked the scenery change, I liked the new set, I liked that it wasn't as stupid and overt as the previous two. So while I don't think it was as good as the original, I definitely think it was a step up. So I would give it 4 out of 10. What about you?
Okay, a bit lower. I'll go 3.5. So yeah,
Okay, so we
I
got above the
think
3.
yeah, we did. Yeah, I think maybe I wasn't as taken with the characters as you, but we're obviously in the rough pool park, and I do agree that they were at least quite proactive, and that the female characters at least weren't too bad. I don't think they were great, but they weren't too bad. So yeah, it's definitely a step up from the standard of 2 and 3. I think we're agreed on that. So okay, so that's our thoughts on Wrong Turn 4, bloody beginnings, and we're going to take a little bit of a break from the franchise and do some other stuff. We're going to do some special Valentine's themed horror reviews, so you can expect them in the next week. We're also going to do or record our next list video, and you can obviously look out for the one that we recorded for January. That will be up soon. The next one, by the way, will be top 10 horror kills, so that's appropriate. So you can look forward. That's going to be the February list, so you can look forward to that one, and get thinking about what your top 10 horror kills would be. I think that should be a really fun video. I'm doing some current streaming shows at the moment. I'm doing Pam and Tommy, the Hulu show about the Pam Anderson Tommy Lee sex tape, which so far is very enjoyable. It's got Craig Gillespie involved, who did I, Tonya and the recent Corella film. He's involved, so a guy who knows how to do style and knows how to do use pop music really effectively in his stuff. So far I'm enjoying that. So I've been reviewing that new limited series. You can find the first 3 reviews of that, probably the first 4 by the time you get this, but first few of those. I'm also doing a new sort of thriller series which is on Apple TV called Suspicion, which I've done the first couple of episodes of that. It's got a pretty decent cast there, and so far that's solid stuff as well. So doing some current TV reviews. I'm also doing the HBO series Euphoria, which I've sort of followed from the start of the show. So they're on to season 2 now, and I have some pretty big thoughts on season 2 of that. So those reviews are probably worth checking out. Too long now till me and Rachel start Stranger Things, which is our next big show. So that's very exciting as well. Obviously, like and subscribe as always. Let us know what you think of Wrong Term 4. And Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Yes, so you can follow me at Rachel McDonald on YouTube, video essays covering movies and TV shows. I have a screen video which should hopefully be up by the time this is posted, doing a deep dive into that franchise. And you can follow me through Tumblr and Twitter. Links are all through my channel. So Keith will leave a link in the description, and come follow me everywhere.
Okay. Great stuff. And obviously, as I said, we will return soon with Wrong Term 5, but we will be doing some other stuff before we get there as well. So look out for that. A lot of different stuff coming up from us in the coming weeks and months. So thanks for listening. We'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.